Welcome to episode 181 of Stageworthy. I'm your host, Phil Rickaby. Stageworthy is a podcast about people in Canadian theatre featuring conversations with actors, directors, playwrights, and more. I want to take a second to tell you about a very important conference coming up. Got Your Back Canada invites all acting teachers to attend their Acting Educators Conference on May 27th and 28th, 2019. Whether you work as part of an institution, as a private coach, or someone who's just interested in pursuing acting education, this conference is your opportunity to meet other passionate and dedicated teachers and learn some new techniques and practices to bring to the classroom. The conference will explore exciting new ideas and tools around anti-oppression, harassment, and mental health. For more information, visit gybaactingeducators.com or search Got Your Back Canada. Let's talk about Today Takes. You know, I love Today Takes. Today Takes is an app and website that offers easy and affordable access to a wide variety of must-see cultural performances, from plays and musicals to dance, opera, comedy, immersive experiences, and beyond. Let's take a look at the Today Takes app and see what they have this week. Oh, there's $20 rush tickets to 887 at Canadian Stage. That's going to be a tough show to get tickets to any other way, so Today Takes is probably your best way to get that. There are also great prices on The Brothers' Size in August, Osage County at Soul Pepper, as well as tickets for the Stratford Festival and so much more. Today Takes makes ticket buying simple, and you can purchase tickets in less than 30 seconds. Get it on iOS and Android, or go to todaytakes.com. If you want to drop me a line, remember that you can find Stageworthy on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at StageworthyPod, and you can find the website at stageworthypodcast.com. If you want to drop me a line, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Phil Rickaby, and my website is philrickaby.com. My guests this week are Miriam Goldstein and Blythe Haynes. Miriam is the artistic director of Edge Productions, and Blythe is artistic director of Gangway Theatre. They joined me to talk about Pregnancy Pact, a musical co-produced by Edge Productions and Gangway Theatre. Pregnancy Pact runs from May 1st to May 19th at the Bravo Academy for the Performing Arts in Toronto. And as a special deal for Stageworthy listeners, you can get 20% off your ticket price when you use the checkout code Stageworthy on checkout at edgeproductions.ca. All right, so just to I have Miriam.
Yes, that's
and
me.
Blythe.
Blythe, yeah.
Okay. So make sure that I have everybody's name correct. And we're going to be talking about the Pregnancy Pact.
Mm-hmm. This is a new collaboration between Blythe and I.
Okay. Can we talk about we've started, by the way, in case I'm already recording, so
okay.
I'll cut out all the bullshit.
I'm a giant dork.
Listen, I'll cut off most of the giant dork stuff, but
oh, no, leave it.
Listen, because the truth is that if anybody listening to this, they already know that I'm a giant dork, so
No, I'm happy to have everybody know.
All right, that's fine. We'll leave that part.
I have not disclosed my dork status.
You're a dork in a different way.
It sounds more like you're a dork adjacent.
Yes.
Yeah,
I mean,
she's supportive.
Yes,
supportive.
I like that nerd adjacent.
Yes.
I mean, although if you get me started like Lord of the Rings or like,
okay.
or like literature in the 19th century.
See, that's nerd. That's a different kind.
You know what? I love finding out what people nerd out over. That's one of my favorite things. It's like, tell me what you nerd out on. I'm dating profiles and things like that.
Yeah.
That's what I want to know. Like, what do you nerd out about?
That's
right?
your passion.
Yeah. But not just I don't want to talk about what I nerd out about.
Yeah.
I want to find out what
other people.
What do you nerd out about?
Yeah.
So getting back to
Isn't that why we all got into this industry anyway?
Nerding? Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Theater nerds.
I mean,
yes.
it all depends on where you started nerding first in terms of the theater thing, right?
It's true.
So where did this collaboration start? How did that come about?
Well, we went to school together, and neither of us knew the other one.
High school? College?
No, university. We were both at York University.
The theater studies program, yeah.
Are you in different years?
No,
the same year.
How were you in the same year? You didn't know that you were...
I don't know.
I mean, I was
Is
in
it
my
that
own.
big?
No.
No, it's like I don't even.
It was very pocketed when we were there.
Yeah.
Not cliquey, but just you sort of hung out with the same people a lot.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I was very much not the same person I am now. So we were in the same year. We didn't know each other at all.
No.
And an actor that her company had hired had also worked with my company.
Right.
And I went to see a Fringe show that they were doing. And we met, and I'm looking at her going, and I knew she'd gone to York. I'm like, hang on a minute, what year were you at York? And she wouldn't tell me how old she was. And then she told me what high school she went to, and I have a lot of friends who were in the same year as her, so I guessed they were the exact same age.
Well, actually, I think what she did say was she was looking at me and she went, "How old are you?" And I just kind of went, I mean, actors often don't say how old they are.
Yep.
Not that I'm ashamed, but and then she's like, "Because I think I know how old you are."
Oh.
And I listed why I thought I knew.
She says, "Because I completely already creeped out your Facebook profile."
Yes. Yeah.
Can I ask what the Fringe show was?
Yeah. So it was 6 stories told at night. Which started off as actually an audio drama podcast, which was written by Katie Brisky, and that aired in, I think, 2016. Okay. So I did all the voice work for that. And it went on to win a Parsec Award, actually.
Nice.
For, I think, Katie's better at this. It's for Best Novella Short Fiction. Anyway, we won a Parsec.
Yeah.
And then Katie adapted it for The Fringe.
Okay.
And it was adapted as well to have 3 actors as opposed to just me. So I got to actually play with other actors,
nice.
which is lovely.
Yeah.
So we did that. It went really well. And I'm exploring how to make that a touring show right now as well. So yeah.
And so getting back to how the collaboration was born, when you figured out that you guys were in the same year.
Well, oddly enough, we both left the program as well.
Okay.
So we started at the same time and we left at the same time.
Oh shit, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And she went off to U of A and I went to New York, and we both sort of studied Meisner as well.
Okay.
So we had these odd parallels happening and then came back together this summer.
And we also kind of both have theater companies, and we both are, women producing theater, but also still, I mean, acting and directing, and just we're going, oh my gosh, you understand what my life is and my stress level is.
Yeah, that's
And we
definitely
support.
true. So over like a series of very lengthy conversations and venting, I think, we sort of realized that we could work really well together. And she had pitched a play, which we're doing in September.
So I think the first time we're kind of like announcing we're doing it. Like, really
That's also
officially.
true.
All right.
This is like an exclusive.
Stage ready scoop. We're doing The Clockmaker.
Which is written by Stephen Massicott, who's a Canadian author. He actually, The Crow's Nest just did Mary's Wedding, which I'd done that show at the Toronto Fringe years ago. And so I had a relationship with him. And so, we're just negotiating contracts right now to do that in September in Toronto. So we're really excited about that.
But part of our conversations were really about how isolating theater is. And that's across the board, I think, whether you're an actor, producer, whatever you do.
Yeah.
But the more jobs you have, I find the more isolating it is, because the less people really do all of the things that you do, or like, and being in Toronto is insular in a different way. And then being outside of Toronto is very isolating. And we don't get to see each other's work.
Are you outside of Toronto?
I am.
Yeah. Okay. How far outside of Toronto?
In Windsor.
Okay. Well, okay.
And my company recently started touring. So last year we did an all-female Henry V, which we toured across Ontario. And it was like the most indie of indie tours.
I know somebody who was in that.
Probably.
Yeah. I remember seeing that. I was like, I didn't get to see that.
Yeah, we were in Toronto for 2 days. And that's started really the journey of realizing how isolating Canadian theatre can be and how separate we all are from each other. Not only in collaborations, but also just we don't get to see each other's work, and we don't get to talk about work that often. So that kind of started us talking about, okay, how can we break that down more? Which led to us sort of committing to do 2 co-productions a year. And I happen to have Pregnancy Pact on the horizon. So this is our first co-production, and then Clockmaker will be our second for the year.
Yeah. I think this one's a really great one to start off with, just because, for one, it's wearing so many different hats. It can be extremely stressful. So I'm just producing on this one, which is great, or co-producing, as opposed to also being in it, which will not be the case for Clockmaker. And Miriam's obviously directing, but Gangway, our mandate is very much to look at Canadian work, but also female-focused work. We definitely like to dabble in the fantastical as well, and look at stories and kind of spaces that are not always often heard from.
And voices in particular that aren't all, like perspectives on stories that you don't get to hear.
So Pregnancy Pact, which I'll let Miriam describe it, but it definitely spoke to a lot of what we're doing. So it seemed like a really good project to trot out our newfound partnership.
Yeah. So Pregnancy Pact is a musical, which people are always very surprised by. They think, like, how can this story possibly be a musical? But it's, I don't know how many people would remember this. And it took the world by storm. In 2008, in Gloucester, Massachusetts, there was this story that came out of these 18 girls in high school who formed a pregnancy pact. And the nurses say that by May of that year, there were over 150 pregnancy tests administered at the school. There were 18 girls, all ranging sort of between the ages of 14 and 17, who were pregnant. Now, whether that's the pact element of that is true or is up for debate, and a lot of the girls say no, and the nurses sort of waffle on that. The principal says yes, but the writers of this show were really fascinated by that. So the musical is inspired by the true story and was used as a jumping off point to really gain access to these teenage voices and why on earth anybody would want to do that. Yeah. And why you would choose to be pregnant at the age of 15, 16. I think the oldest girl the oldest character in the show is 17. So really in that formative period of your life, why are you choosing to give it up, essentially, and to give yourself over to this other tiny human that you made? And then the music is, I described it, I said it's a pop rock musical, and everybody just kind of rolls their eyes, but the music is really deeply empathetic. Like, it's hard hitting, it's fun, it's motivating. It's really anthemic, a lot of the songs. And it's a small cast. So it's 6 girls, 1 man playing multiple characters, and then there's a live band as well. So it's
there's quite a lot of moving pieces to that.
Yes. Yeah. There's a lot of moving pieces, and the musicians are incredibly talented, and we really lucked out with our cast. We did an all-student version of this in 2017, and 3 of the original cast members are now working in the industry. Sam Burke, who's playing Maddie, just finished up Circle Game for...
Persephone?
Yeah.
Persephone.
And they were on tour, and so she's just coming off that tour and coming back home to Windsor. And a lot of Toronto-based actors are coming down to do it. Like, I think the majority of the actors are actually from Toronto, and the musicians are mostly from Windsor. So we're really just
coalescing.
How small can we make the division?
Yeah.
And then we're having sort of a soft open in Windsor, and then we bring it up for a long run in Toronto.
Wow.
Yeah.
So with all these moving pieces,
yes.
Did you know what you were getting into when you decided you were going to do this?
I mean, it's not my first musical, thankfully. I think had it been my first musical, I would have just cried and quit. But the Edge Productions, this is our 8th season. And we opened with a musical. The company was never supposed to last longer than one show. I was home. I just finished doing some regional theater and in England, and I came home, and some buddies of mine and I sort of put the company together to do one show while I was home renewing a visa. I met my husband at the same time, and so I ended up staying, and this is our 9th year in business, which is crazy. But we started with Bear, which is a really big musical. It had 18 people in the cast and like a 10-piece pit, and it was just wild.
Wow.
So Trial by Fire, learned a ton, went way over budget. but then I dialed back and I started really trying to figure out which stories I wanted to tell and why I wanted to do them, and all the things they teach you in theater school that you sort of forget about, and then they come back and are like, why are you still fighting this fight?
Yeah.
So over the course of 8 years, I've realized I actually can do a range of things, and I don't need to be scared of all the moving parts because I've been working for 8 years. We've done 4 to 6 shows every year. So I've slowly kind of figured out how to manage all of those. And last year, I just advance and advance and advance. Last year, the tour of Henry V was 18 people on the road, just caravanning across Ontario. All of our stuff was in those cars. It was just a wild experience. We took it to like 6 cities, and I did all of that, just me in my house, planned the whole thing, booked everything, rehearsed it, and went on the road.
So crazy.
It's the craziest project I've ever worked on. And we edited, Molly, who was my assistant last year, we edited the text down from 49 characters or 48 characters to 8. To 8 actors. So they were 8 actors playing 25 roles out of 49. It was just like the craziest thing. So that, as stressful and as like soul wrenching as it was, taught me that I can do all of these other things. And like, let's just keep going. And we had a sold out run on that tour, which was the most surprising thing, because you do, an arguably not very well-known Shakespeare history, male military story with all women.
Yeah.
Only 8 people in the cast. And you tour it to cities that none of us are from or work in. And we sold out, which is like the nuttiest thing. So that gave me sort of the permission, I think, to go, okay, let's keep going. Let's keep pursuing more things.
Yeah.
And then we reconnected after 12 years, 13 years.
I think one thing that it's a theme I've been sort of hearing, not like Miriam and I have talked about it as well, but just with so many other, particularly I think women creators, is just that you have no idea what you are going to do until you actually do it. And just because something sounds impossible or kind of crazy doesn't mean that it should stop you. And there's been so much of this idea of, I don't know how to do that. I guess I'll learn. I guess I'll find out. And there are days where you just feel awful, right? Like, I can't do this. But then you're able to, there's having such an amazing network of support around you. Like, I can, call Miriam and Miriam, today's the worst, or, and just feel so supported knowing that everyone's going through it together, which is, I think, a huge, huge help for sure.
Yeah. I also think all artists feel that way. I think any medium, any kind of work that they're doing, almost all artists I know sort of have an element of imposter syndrome that they carry around with them, and like an element of, I don't really know what I'm doing. And people always ask me, like, how do you juggle all the balls that you do? And like, I'm like, no, I don't juggle. They're on the floor and I kick them forward when they come across my line of vision. And I just hope that they all cross the line at some point. And if they don't, then I work with what did. And trying to take away some of that pressure that you have to. I think raw stories are more interesting to me. Like, something about polished theater has lots of positive qualities, but there's also something about just telling a story.
I like things that have a bit of a rough edge to them. Like not everything has been smoothed away.
Yeah, well, I think that's more, to me, it's more interesting storytelling. And I think there's a lot of artists who came up around the same time that we're all starting to kind of feel that way. Like, we grew up watching very worked, very perfected art, and it's beautiful, and it takes a lot of skill and all of those things, but like, there's not necessarily the honesty that we all crave. And I didn't get into theater to create perfectly polished pieces of work. I got into theater to tell stories and to really find a moment of catharsis with anybody in the audience. And I think if there's one person who feels that way and can connect to the story you're telling and walks away with something, then we've done our job as artists. And the more people you can do that with, the better. But arguably, if one person feels not alone or feels connected to a story or feels heard, then I think that's great.
Imposter syndrome is an interesting thing.
Yeah.
Because I think
Yes.
I think that it is something that everybody feels. And whether they admit it or not.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that is not often talked about.
Yeah. Well, we like to all seem like we've got all of our
Sure.
shit together.
I'm actually a big fan of because do you guys know the author Neil Gaiman?
Yep.
Yes.
He talks about it all the time.
Absolutely.
Like
yeah.
that he still feels like
Yeah.
with all of his success, you know,
Yep.
everything that he's done, that he still feels like they're going to come and someone
Tell
with a
me.
clipboard is going to come and say, "Well, you're done now. We know that you're not
Yeah.
really
You
a
shouldn't
writer."
be here.
Yeah.
And to have him talk about it, that he still feels like he is not, that he has imposter syndrome, I think it kind of makes me a little bit more confident that I can at least talk, okay, I feel that too.
I think that it's something. I feel like this has been something so many people have been starting to talk more about, because we always talk about what we are doing, not what we're not doing.
Oh, sure.
You know, because who wants to talk about that? But I think that there is such value in saying that. Yeah, I don't know. Today I watched YouTube videos today because I couldn't handle. Doing the myriad of things I was doing, or I wasn't really busy or something like that. We'll always talk about, I've got this project and this project,
sure.
and just listing your resume essentially. And it's even worse, with things like Instagram, right? I was actually just talking about this the other day because I was, I'm trying to figure out Instagram stories.
Okay, yeah, no.
I hate them. I'll just put that out there. I hate them because I feel like I can't pre-plan them, and it has to happen like spontaneously, but then you have to add filters and boomerangs and oh my gosh.
I think you're putting too much on it, but that's
a whole other thing.
That's a whole other thing.
But
Yeah.
I was thinking. So, but the point was that I was watching a bunch of people's Instagram stories like back to back to back,
Dissecting them. I'm
trying to
sure.
figure it out. But it actually, in the end, just made me feel horrible because I was like, their lives are so much better than mine.
No, they're not. They're more curated.
Exactly.
That's the thing is that Instagram is a place where we curate our lives.
100%. But when you're doing things like promoting a show or producing, that is one of those hats you do have to wear.
Absolutely.
And you do have to go out there and do it. But it's kind of go, well, does someone really, if they can't handle me in my worst day, they sure don't deserve my best day. But that is what you're doing in constantly, not just Instagram, but just in the industry as well.
It's true. It's always interesting to the artist resistance to promotion,
Yes.
which is a thing that we all have to learn how to do, but it is difficult to say, okay, so now I have to talk about this thing that I'm doing and talk about it like it's awesome when we probably our inclination is to go, it's just a thing that I'm doing. It's not
I'm an imposter.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't really deserve to be here. Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm not actually a real human.
I don't know if you remember, a few months ago, my husband took a contract out of town, and he was a production manager for I think he was gone for 7 weeks. We've got 2 kids. And I remember messaging Blythe.
Yeah, I do.
Because I was still working and I was still doing a lot of stuff, but I wasn't as productive as I normally am because I had a lot more sort of other human responsibilities outside of my artist work. And I messaged Blythe in the middle of the night. I was like, it would be really nice if you were here because I just need to talk to somebody about how unproductive I'm being right now and how much I've just shut down this whole other side of my brain. And I went into, I would send the occasional email and do all these other little things. But really, I just sat at home and played Breath of the Wild for weeks. And trying to explain that to people because they still see me being productive because I can make it look like I'm being productive.
Yeah.
And me sending an email in the morning is technically productive.
Yeah.
And then I would spend 4 hours doing nothing.
Listen, there are just days when
Yes.
you need to sit and play a video game.
Or weeks.
Or weeks. Thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying that because I've had that.
Yeah.
Or I'm just like, this project is too much. I need my brain to turn off
Yeah.
for a little bit so that I can actually come back to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But we don't like to talk about that because we all like to look like we're super productive and active and look how great we're doing.
Sure.
Yeah.
We're negotiating something right now with somebody who is really struggling, and suddenly he's talking about it.
Yeah.
You know, and I've had a lot of artists who on their medical form, like when you work with us, we have a medical form you have to fill out and tell us what's going on with you. Nobody writes down anxiety, depression, any of mental illnesses other than sort of extreme ones. Nobody writes them down.
No, because we don't see them as a disease. There's shame about it. There's stigma. There's all that kind of stuff.
But what happens in the room when you haven't told me that you're a highly anxious person, or you haven't told me that you struggle with depression, on my worst day, I don't know how to filter for you. So it's really interesting. The things that we leave out actually prove to be our largest liabilities because we're all empathetic for the most part. We're all empathetic people. If we all know what's going on, we can have a much better process and discussion and we can be a lot more supportive. But we don't like disclosing these things. And it's really interesting how frequently we come up against that now. Yeah, which is, I mean, this is how we bonded, though. It was just kind of saying, here's all my crap.
Yeah.
Do you have this crap? Yes, I do. Okay, great. Let's work together.
I think that I kind of wish that the theater world had more opportunities to bond over bitching. Like, there's no place where we can go where we could just sort of hang out together and just, like, be around each other and maybe bitch, maybe construct, like, all of these things that I wish that we could do more.
Yeah.
I think that there are some kind of groups, I mean, that you're able to just go and kind of network. I mean, like, I think actually tonight
That's work.
No, it's true, but I think that bringing that into like a work kind of connotation, is kind of cool. I know as well, like TAPA, they do have like seminars and stuff, kind of working with bringing sort of like mental health into kind of the conversation. So there are things out there, but yeah, I mean, other than just the bar after rehearsal or show, it'd be nice to have a space to.
That's totally. I mean, the thing is, like, going to a networking event as an introvert, I'm never going to do that.
Well, it's very difficult, and like I sort of have a timer on it. So I can be extroverted for a fair amount of time, and I've trained myself to be okay at it. But it drops and it goes down. And once the buzzer goes in my brain, I kind of shut down. And so I've had to learn how to do that. But not everybody has the opportunity or is even able to sort of force themselves past that.
Like, I can sometimes get in the door, but it's the most awkward 15, 20 minutes before I'm like, I think I'm just going to get out of here. So, like, it's not something that is really easy to do.
I think it's also kind of expectation. I was chatting with someone in the summertime about sort of this thing because I was going, you have to get out to all these events and
Blythe
things like
is
that.
the ultimate networker, by the way.
Oh, yeah?
She is like a forced extrovert, I assume.
Are you a natural extrovert? Or
I would say I'm a natural one, but I think everyone has like a percentage of introvert, extrovert.
Sure.
I definitely recharge from other people for sure.
Okay.
But I mean, I was actually really shy as a kid.
But introvert, and this is on my other podcast, which is for introverts. We always like talk about, like, it's not that we're shy. Introverted isn't shy. It's how you get your energy recharged.
Yeah, no, but I actually was shy.
Yeah.
Like I do recharge from other people 100% until it's done, and then I need to go in a cave. But I was always afraid, though, of how people would see me as like a little kid. But I was always very outgoing at home and stuff. So I think going into these kind of situations, I've always just gone, we'll just brazen it out. But I always want to watch out for other people, or like I try anyway, and make sure that I'm not comfortable fully if someone's standing over there looking really awkward. I want to kind of bring them in because it makes me feel better. But I guess where I was kind of going with this was I was going, okay, so I have to get out to so many events, which is exhausting to kind of do that. But someone said to me, they're like, look, you can just go to an opening night. You don't even have to talk to anyone. Your face was there. And the next time, you might go, oh, hey, I recognize that person. They might recognize me. You didn't talk, but your face was there. And that was a huge revelation for me to not expend so much energy. And also the idea of kind of like fear of missing out, which I had on Thursday, actually, massively, because I had to cancel with my friend to go see a show because I got this audition that I needed to prep for, and I knew that I was doing a million other things in the weekend. So I said I wasn't going to go. But it was, of course, like that night. I think it was like the Dear Evan Hansen premiere. It was the opening. And that's when I was watching all those Instagram stories going, I'm not cool at all. Because I would have much rather been out with my friend. But I also needed to recharge and actually work. So I think it's that balance as well of kind of what's work, what's not, and balancing out your energies and what's going to be best for you, and not feeling like you're not doing the right thing. Whatever you're doing is best for you.
I think that's difficult. That's a difficult thing for people to navigate sometimes.
Yeah.
What is best?
I haven't figured it out.
What is best for me as opposed to what do I think I should be doing?
Yeah, I also think, and I'm sure other people have this, but I find artists in particular have a lot of blurred lines.
Yes.
And everything sort of bleeds this way and that way. And it's really hard to tell, am I working right now, or am I hanging out with my friend who happens to be in the same industry and we're talking about projects that we can do together? Because fun things also happen to be work a lot of the time.
But I mean, if you are just hanging out with your friend, trying to figure out what else you can work on, doesn't that serve both functions?
It does, but that's exactly what I mean, because sometimes, like, there's a good friend of mine, and every time we get together, it turns into a work session because we bounce ideas off each other very well. But a casual hangout will turn into like a very deep work session, and we both leave totally exhausted.
It's tiring.
So we've had to actually sort of put limitations on what we're allowed to talk about when.
Oh shit, okay.
But that's really difficult for me to do because always in my brain I'm thinking about, oh, that's interesting, or like how can I convert that to this? And it's tough. And my husband and I have that too, because we're both in the industry, and we both and we run this company together, and constantly talking about either kids or work is just, it's always bleeding everywhere, and we very rarely can manage to have like 2 hours together where we don't talk about those things. It's really hard to shut that part off. So it's interesting, and everybody I find really struggles with.
Absolutely.
I think we all do struggle with those kinds of boundaries.
Absolutely.
And I know, in my day job, I work with people who are very passionate about the events industry, and so when they're hanging out after work, that's what they're talking about, And it's the same with all my theater my theater people, is like even when we're not at the thing, we're talking about the thing. So it's just a constant, although I do have some wonderful nerd friends. And so we will take a break from talking about nerding about theater to nerding about comics, sci-fi, whatever, which is a great break, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I find my brothers serve that function the best for me, because neither of them are in the industry at all, and they're very dorky. So we have a great time. We talk about movies and music and politics and nothing else.
Nice. I think everybody does need somebody they can do that with, so they can talk about.
I'm trying to think now.
Theater.
Play a little Risk.
Yeah.
Try not to kill each other.
Listen, if you can get a bunch of people to go to, I don't know, like a board game cafe and just be like,
I love doing that. Yeah.
Because then you're doing a thing that you probably wouldn't do at home. You can go out, have a couple of drinks, and discover a new game and things like that.
It's funny because both my parents were actors, and my dad's a director. So I mean, I grew up just always in that sort of environment. So I feel like my life has always been just the theater, and I grew up going like rehearsal halls and stuff. So I have this like weird sort of separation, but I also don't know how to separate that, I think, because of that.
So just since that's the perfect segue for like one of my favorite things to find out why people do this thing. And your parents were in theater. Yeah,
my parents so I was actually born in Edmonton, and my parents, they're from Ontario, but they met in theater school in Alberta, and I don't know. Yeah, they were professional actors for like 25 years, and out west, and then we moved here when I was a kid, and my dad went into kind of film and stuff like that. But I don't know. I don't remember a time when I didn't want to be an actor. Now, whether that was because that's what mommy and daddy did, so therefore I will as well. But we do have a video, I think, when I was like 2, at our cottage, where I'm I'm running around on this deck, and my mom says doing like a Gregorian chant or something. I don't know. And my mom, I did tell her to get off my show. It was my show. And on the video, I think my mom says, Blair, I think this is the first time that she said this is her show. So yeah, but I think probably my first gig was, I was 16 months old, and my mom had an audition for a Lotto 64 commercial.
Okay.
And they said they needed a baby. So she's like, I have one of those. And she had this, when I was a baby, there was this thing that whenever a camera came out, I would look at the camera and smile. So it was instinct. And so she brought me to the audition, and they were like, no, we decided we're scrapping the baby bit. She's like, no, you have to see this. So she pulled the camera out, and sure enough, I smiled. So they're like, she's hired. So, because the reason they wanted it was because it was, I've seen it. It's a night shoot, and this UFO, which they put in post later, comes down and says, Lotto 64, and the baby has to look at it. But of course, it's like 10 o'clock at night, and I'm a 16-month-old who's been on set for goodness knows how long.
Babies don't really sleep. It's a myth.
No, but this baby was very cranky and did not want to actually look and smile at the camera that was on a crane coming down. So my dad actually had to go up like on the crane and be going, Blythe! Oh no. Here! And then they were getting very angry with the baby who was not performing professionally. But
there
hey,
are new laws about using infants.
I know.
Worry. You would have been protected.
I would have been, but I wasn't at the time. But hey, they paid me, and that went to my education fund.
Question for you.
Yeah.
Was there, because, when you're a kid and it's the thing that you want to do, did that ever change? Was there a moment when you were like, yes, this is what I'm going to do? Did that waver at all through school?
Yeah, actually. So my parents had always said to me, this is a really tough industry and tough job. If you don't want this to the exclusion of all else, don't do it. In fact, if you can do something else, please do it. And so I'd always grown up with that. And I always thought I knew exactly what it was. Like, I know it's hard. I know it's hard. And when I was about 12, I sort of doubted for a second. I went, can I do this? I don't know. And because my parents had said that to me all the time, I immediately freaked out and said, I questioned it. I can't do it anymore. I'm going to go to my backup job, being a writer.
Oh.
What a 12-year-old you were.
Which is so much more stable. So I decided for about a year that I wasn't going to act. And it was an awful year. I really, really felt like I just cut off a piece of myself. And I was so disappointed. And I was like, well, that's my life. It's just not going to be it. And so then when I was 13, I decided, nope, I missed it. I will be an actor. And I just kind of didn't look back from there. But I would say now, though, I would say when I was in my mid-20s, I definitely had a moment where I was going, this is really hard. That fear I had when I was 12, it's happening now. And so I took a bit of a break. And founded a history actor department at Black Creek Pioneer Village, and decided this is kind of what I'm going to do. But I had to come back and go, no, I do want to actually be pursuing acting all the time. So, from what I've heard from other people as well, like, it's a common thing to constantly be questioning and to take time off and to realize that it's okay to take time off, and it's only going to further your art and stimulate it. I mean, I look at where I am now and I go, you know what? I'm still here. I'm still doing it. Yeah. And I've broadened my horizons to what I think being an actor is and being an artist is. And I'm a lot happier for doing that. So yeah.
I quit for 5 years in my 20s, actually. I was like, I'm not going to do this anymore. And I got myself the first of my day jobs and just sort of did that for a while. And then I started trying to find balance. But I think you're right. I think I know a lot of people who I was in theater school with who don't do it anymore. That happens too.
I think I just realized now, talking about this, that when I look at sort of like my career, I guess it's really just like a lifetime. But I realized I started working actually very young.
So did I.
And I just kind of realized that right now that if you look at the sum total of kind of my career, it actually spans longer than I thought it did. But starting working at 16 months old.
Yeah. That's not many people can say that, especially people who are still doing it.
Yeah. So, I mean, anyway, that's me.
Miriam, how did you get into this?
Well, according to my mother, I had excess energy and they put me in dance and I started sort of demanding more lessons and more things because I liked it so much. But I was a very precocious kid, shall we say. And I can't remember what the talent thing is called. It's up in Toronto. It's like a modeling and talent and something.
Ford?
No. It's older.
Does it exist anymore?
I don't know. I have no idea if it exists.
So old it doesn't exist.
But I was about 10 years old and I filled out the application by myself and I mailed it in, but I had no check with it because I was like 10.
Yeah.
And my mom got a call saying, you left out your deposit check. If you could just send that to us. So I think the first show I ever did, I was young. I did Annie. I played Duffy. I started in community theater and you do all the things that most of us have done. But I was a dancer primarily until I sent in this application. And I won in like a commercial division and I got my first agent, who is no longer with us, but he was like this hilarious crotchety old man, who was really excited because I had a resume that I had put together that nobody else had. Everybody was just giving him sort of portfolio shots. And this like 10-year-old kid had a resume that because I was that kind of strange kid. But I always thought I was going to be a dancer actually. And, failing to be a ballerina or modern dancer, I was going to be a human rights lawyer or an environmentalist.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Those are
very different things from being a dancer.
Yeah. Well, my father is a lawyer, and so that was a path that I think made sense to a lot of people in my family. And I grew up kind of going to the firm and hanging out, and he would talk to me about cases and stuff like that. So that's why I'm good at theater contracts now.
Okay.
It's helped a lot in starting a business, but that was sort of like, this is a semi-reasonable path, and then there's this other thing that I want to do, but if I fail, I'm capable of doing these other ththemes. But every time I pictured any of these other things, I felt completely miserable. Yeah.
I want to ask you a question before we go on, because there's sort of a moment that you glossed over there in that early story. So you filled out this application.
Oh yes.
And you sent it in.
Yes.
With no check,
deposit. Yeah.
And they called your mom.
Yes.
And your mom just said, "Oh, I'll send that along," or was there?
No, there was a discussion.
There was a discussion.
She said, "Okay, thank you" to the person, and then we had to have a discussion about how I had to ask before I did these things. And are you sure? And this is, going to be really hard. And you're going to have to, there's all these different competitions that you submitted for that you would have to do. You would have to write, like part of the commercial audition was, or commercial competition was you had to write your own script and like essentially perform a commercial live for whatever topic they gave you.
Right.
And I said, yes, I wanted to do these things. Okay. And I was really committed. The commercial, actually, of all things, I literally wrote a little musical number and performed it as the commercial. And I like put in whatever the business thing was at the end of this little musical dance number. And I dressed up as a newsie and like, as a theatrical kid.
Sure, yeah.
And I also discovered around the same time, like I think I was 11, and I discovered that dancing, 5-6 days a week for many hours at a time. And I was dancing professionally at the time with a company in Detroit as a child, but doing large scale ballets and stuff. And I discovered that I had chronic tendonitis.
Okay.
Which I still have, lucky me. And my body had taken quite a beating before I even hit puberty. And so I came to a really devastating realization very young that the thing I thought I was going to do, I couldn't do. And so what ended up happening, I think I was 11 or 12, I started reading Shakespeare, of all things. And I didn't understand a lot of it, but I read the entire canon. And then my mom took me to Stratford, and I saw one of William Hutt's retirement tempests, like the first of the series of retirement tempests that he did. And I ended up, I was hosting this radio show at the time as like a very small child, and it's called Reach for the Stars. And I used to literally just interview people about how did you get to the career you're in, and like what made you do that. And I was really fascinated with that. And so I interviewed Richard Minette. I'm at 11 or 12, I interviewed Richard, and had this really intense conversation with him about theater and what that is. And then I got to see Bill Hutt perform an incredible Prospero, and that is like the pillar performance that I compare all other Prosperos to, is that first one. And it sort of changed my perspective, and I realized that was a form of storytelling that my body could do and I could access. And then it sent me on a whole new trajectory, and everything else kind of disappeared. And I also quit theater though after school.
Right after school?
Yeah.
Okay.
I finished my conservatory program in New York. And it was a very overwhelming process to go through that school. And Meisner is, it's a complicated topic, Meisner. People love it, they hate it, they are interested, they're scared of it. But I went through an entirely Meisner-based program. So all of my classes were rooted in that kind of view of theater and of work, and sort of really stripped bare and like forcing yourself into really uncomfortable places of honesty. And at the time for me, there was a lot of stuff that I hadn't dealt with, and some really formative elements of my high school career that I had never even looked at, that I just really shoved in a closet somewhere, and they completely changed who I was. But in this process of 2 years of being at the school, they all sort of showed up, and they really broke me down. And so by the time I graduated, I sort of blamed the work, and I said, okay, well, this work is clearly not for me. And like, I can't create theater because I'm this really screwed up person, and like, I can't cope and whatever. Well, therapy hours later, I realized that, at the root of all of these fears and all of these struggles is actually these few sort of elements of, that formed me as a person. And so once I could pinpoint where everything else was coming from, I could start to break that down and make work safe again and make it fun again. And so after, I think it was out for about a year and a half, and it was the most miserable ever. And I went to an audition for Neil Simon's Chapter 2. And I was doing a cold read, and all of a sudden all the training made sense to me, and it all clicked into my body, and I had complete access, and all of the rest of that crap that I'd been carrying around with me sort of fell into its place. And so then I didn't want to quit anymore, and I reintegrated myself into the world. And after that, I went to RADA. That's when I went to England. Was like, I had this epiphany. I did a couple of shows, and then I moved. Yeah, but I don't know, it's really interesting, because people often, the question you get is like, well, do you regret not dealing with that stuff before? Or like, do you regret doing these things or any of these choices? Well, no, because ultimately it gave me a level of understanding of any kind of work that I want to do that I never would have had otherwise. Yeah. And those struggles, I think, make me far more empathetic and far more, I can see other people processing their issues during the work, and I can help them now in a way that I would have been very dismissive of before. I think I wasn't nearly as good a person as I am now.
Well, it's good that you can admit that now.
Oh, 100%. If I'm glad a little bit that Blythe doesn't remember me from when we were in school. I was not a great person back then, but in retrospect, you look at that and you go, oh, you had PTSD and you're struggling with depression, and you had all of these things happen to you right before you graduated high school and like moved away. Yeah. It's very interesting. And like, people I knew back then, they meet me now and they go, oh, you're not the same person. I'm like, well, I should hope not.
Yeah. One question that I have hearing your story about, because, being so focused on dance and then not being able to do that and deciding to go into acting. What was that transition like? Was that a difficult transition to go from dance to theater? Did you miss dance over theater, or?
I mean, I still miss dance, honestly. No, I think I found my home very much. Like, I'm happy where I landed. But at the time, my biggest fear about it was I had a mentor who was a Romanian ballet master, and he was this really incredible person. And I was really terrified to tell him, you know, and this is prepubescent child, like, you shouldn't be struggling with these things at that age. But I was really terrified to tell him that, like, my body can't do what you've trained me to do, and I'm going to go into this other medium because it hits all of these same sort of home notes for me. And I went to his house and I had dinner with him, and this was in Detroit, and sort of broke the news to this man that I really admired. And he told me that it didn't matter what I went into as long as I gave it 100% and I dedicated myself wholly to it, then he would approve no matter what. And it was this weird sort of release of all of the fear and tension I'd been holding on to about making that transition. And I mean, I still danced. I still took lessons and stuff, but I have shin splints that have never gone away. I have chronic tendonitis. My hips are like the craziest. There's nothing good that my body took from dance other than discipline, I think. And it helped me along the way. But yeah, the first few years were really difficult, I think. I went from dancing 6 days a week for hours at a time to maybe a couple classes a week in school. It's terrifying. And I know people who, I'm lucky, honestly, that I made that transition very early. I know people who, a dear friend of mine was a ballerina, and she tore her ACL twice, and then her career was over. And she had nothing else that she could do because she'd never... And that's like, I think that's the fear for all of us. Yeah. Like, if your body gives out on you and that's your instrument, what do you do? And she had never seen or looked at anything else. That's her sole focus. So now she teaches, but that's a really scary thing for a lot of people as well. So I'm lucky, I think, in a lot of ways that all of that happened so young. And I had all of these sort of horrible things happen really young. Like I was finished in New York before I was 22. So all of these things and all these really formative decisions were made very young. And then I've had all this time to then adjust and like grow up into those choices. And look back and sort of analyze all of those things and get more comfortable, I think, with who I am now and like how to work as a person who has made really decisions quite young, right?
One of the things that I found interesting about your partnership is you guys have a distance, like a physical distance.
Yes.
You're in Windsor, you're in Toronto. How do you guys navigate that distance? Now, of course, we have Skype and computers and things like that, but there's something about being in the same room with somebody. How do you guys navigate the distance between you to create theater?
I'm going to Windsor tonight. It's a big old road trip, and I'm gonna be there till Thursday, which is gonna be actually fantastic to just have that kind of real time. I don't know. I mean, we haven't talked about that.
Well, I find we both go back and forth, and technology is our best friend. Yeah, absolutely. And I find delegating to each other and like sort of splitting the workload in terms of the administrative stuff is very helpful.
I think actually on that, one of the huge things is that because of where we are, I think in our careers and just like our experience levels, we also trust that the other person is going to do
what they say they're going to do,
which is not always the case. And so when you have, partnerships, like the other half of Gangway, I mean, Katie, she is also someone that I know that she's going to get it done, right? So I think that's a huge thing. It's just there's a level of trust that I also know that that Miriam's also going to be like the same level that I am. That I'm not going to have to figure things out. And
we also are very good communicators with each other, which is I think most problems stem from lack of communication and like people being ashamed, oh, I didn't get to this. And then instead of saying, I didn't get to this, they hide it, which puts you even further behind. And we don't really do that. But like, as an example, we were submitting the show on TAPA. We were submitting Pregnancy Pact, and she opened the file and she started populating it, and then she sent it to like sent me the login, and I logged in on my computer and I filled out what I knew, and we just literally are sharing the same file or the same form and like bouncing back and forth and saving it and sending it, and so it's like the longest game of ping pong you'll ever see.
No, it's true. Yeah, and I think that also just on that, like, communication is so key. And I think that there's also things that's like not being afraid to say, I don't know the answer to this. Do you know the answer? And okay. And it's just very quick. We also tend to think very similarly.
Yeah, the friend I had mentioned earlier, the actor that has worked with both of us, finds it very eerie that we're now friends, but also that we're very similar in terms of how we talk about things and our outlook on certain elements of theater. And
I think it perturbs him a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. But it's helpful though when you know that you're fairly in sync with somebody, and even if you're not, you can have a discussion around it. And I don't think there's any fear in our relationship. And I very often in collaborations, there is fear for whatever reason, either distrust or just fear that the other person doesn't respect you the same way, or
intimidation
or whatever. And I think because we have similar stories in a lot of ways, don't have any of that. We're very much on the same playing field.
I think also there isn't like a codependency either. No. You know, like so it does feel like we are on like you said, the same playing field, like we're equals, which is really nice. Yeah. You know, I've got my stuff going on and Miriam's got her stuff going on, and knowing 100% that if I need support on something that's even not like necessarily like a show we're producing together, but if I have a question, I know for sure I could just ask her. So I think that that's a huge thing as well, is being able to work together, but also not be codependent.
Yeah. Well, we both run companies independently as well. Like our co-pros are really two companies coming together. And they're two completely independently functioning companies. So it's interesting where we overlap and where we don't. And I mean, we both can put up shows on our own, and we do that all the time anyway. But then we get
Miriam more than me. She's like more experienced. I'm just going to learn.
No, you know what it is? I can't not work. Yeah. So I'm perpetually working all the time, much to the chagrin of my entire family, I'm sure. But I am always have a project going on, because I turn into a not very nice person when I'm not feeling inspired or when I'm not working on something creative.
Absolutely.
I definitely relate to that. If I don't have a writing project or something that is at least on the back burner, I don't know what to do with myself.
Absolutely. And I find that I get a little aggressive about it. And I have a time to be honest on a public discussion. No, but I do. I find I'm not as nice of a person. I'm not very... Because I think it causes me to struggle with my sense of self a lot more than it maybe should. And so because that struggle exists, if I'm not working, I'm less kind and I'm less able to cope with the world around me. Because it takes such a specific part of myself to create work that it like sort of alleviates the pressure on all these other elements of myself. Sure.
I have a question.
All right, let's do it. Yeah.
It's all coming out now.
No, well, and this could actually be for either of you. Because writing and directing are much more sometimes, there's an aspect of it that is like solo, right? Like you need to kind of go in and plan things out.
It's very isolating.
And it's, whereas, as an actor, that's completely collaborative, right? So like for me, I guess being a producer and then also running a company, it gets really hard for me, because if I'm doing a show, I'm in a show, I'm in rehearsal, and it's not going to be as easy for me to actually kind of run all those aspects. But for writing and directing, that kind of does dovetail a bit more. So I just kind of wonder, juggling projects when they're all sort of kind of a little more cerebral sometimes. How does that work for you guys?
Oh boy. Well, like I said, I don't juggle. They're all on the floor.
Right.
I think that's the most important lesson is that they're just on the ground and you just kick them forward. No, I find writing, I think, would be very isolating in one way. I write a little. I would never call myself a writer. But directing and being the artistic director is more isolating than I expected it to be. Because as the director, the buck stops with you anyway. But when you're also everybody's boss on top of that, and I'm the one who negotiates their contracts, I'm the one who is employing literally everybody in the room. Not only does the buck stop with me as the director, but then I'm also the owner of the boat that we're on. Right. And so I have to steer the boat, but I also have to make sure that all the bills are paid and all these other things. It's exhausting, I would say, is the best word for it, and can be overwhelming. I've gotten better at it over the years, and I'm very thankful that I got better at it. But I used to it was extremely overwhelming, especially in the first few years. And then I had kids on top of that, which is a whole other thing. And so you just kind of figure it out as you go. And I think that's true of any kind of creation, but I think that's true of life. I think as human beings, we literally are improvising our entire lives. And you can plan all you want, but ultimately every conversation you have, every choice you make is on the fly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of time boxing.
Time boxing?
Time boxing.
What is that?
You get your calendar and you literally, like you say, so this is the time period where I'm writing. This is the time period where I'm working on production stuff. This is the time. And you actually put all of these things in your calendar, because if it's in your calendar, you do it.
Started doing that.
Yeah,
I didn't know it had a name,
it
though.
It has a name.
This is magic.
And it's very much a getting things done thing. And I find it super helpful. On days when I'm like, okay, so I have to write, I have to get my promotional images for my Fringe show. I also have to edit a podcast, like all these things. I time box my evenings. Also, if I'm writing and it starts to get painful, I take a break.
Yeah.
Taking a break, whether it's working on a new project, I just need to write this short story just to get my brain in a different place, or even less cerebrally active, I need to play a video game for a good 3 hours, then I'll do that too.
Yeah.
I also find I'm a big list maker. And I was at this producers conference in New York in November, and one of the things that Ken Davenport was saying was that he writes like call to action lists. And I'm like, I do that. Because basically what you do, you just write down everything that needs to be done. And some people are really organized and they group it together. I just sort of write everything that comes to my head. And then I put little stars next to like the priority items on my list.
Started doing that too.
I
didn't know all these things had names.
Hey.
And what I find is it grows, but as you cross stuff off, it's very satisfying. And so it motivates me to do more things.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I also front load as much as I can.
Right. Yep,
Like
me
if
too.
I'm doing I'm going to be doing my show at the Toronto Fringe this summer. And so now comes the process of creating any promotional images, like the base images that I will then slap things on. Like if there's a review, if there's this, if there's that, but I have to get all of that work done at the beginning, because when I become an actor, I don't have time for that. But then during production, like when the show's going on, I'm like, I have an image ready for this. I don't have to think about it. Everything is ready for me.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. It's interesting, I think, about this idea of constantly being busy and constantly creating and stuff. And I get itchy if I do too many producery things. I start to go, because I definitely feel like I look at myself as like a producer actor, which I think is a different beast than like a producer writer or actor or producer director. I
also find it interesting that you say producer actor. Most actors I know would have said actor producer.
I actually noticed that too.
I feel like yesterday I said actor producer. Guys, I switch it up.
Okay.
It depends. Today my producer brain is going, whereas other times there might be something else. Like it'll be interesting because like when we do Clockmaker, it's a co-pro between our companies, but Miriam is the director.
Yeah.
And so that for me becomes very much like the director is the person who's in charge. However, having that sort of duality.
We'll come back on and we'll let you know how we're
Yeah,
working together then.
Please, I want to do that.
Because our relationship will completely change with that project. So it'll be interesting to see how, if it does stay the same or if it's going to completely shift on us.
Interesting.
Yeah. We'll have to like do journals.
You guys should. There's your Instagram story right there.
Oh, don't even say the word Instagram story. I'm like getting hives.
Oh my God. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that.
It's okay. I'll survive.
Guys, thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
This has been a Homebody Productions production.